So we had a package drop off, so of course we had barking dogs. So I'm going to share my screen with you again here. Okay, we're gonna put it. So the object that we left off of was this tablet from a foundation deposit of King Mentuhotep II. Remember, we are in the Middle Kingdom, and King Mentuhotep II is basically viewed as the founder of the Middle Kingdom. So the full translation of all these hieroglyphs is beloved of Matu Re, Lord of Thebes, King of Lower and Upper Egypt, Neb Hap-Atre, i.e. one of the names, so one of the fivefold titulary of Mentuhotep II. May he live forever. And because the way that hieroglyphs works, it's not a straight up and down translation, so that's why the numbers are here, because at least to our eyes, it's a little bit. So the Matu Re part is here. So that's the name of the deity that this object is dedicated to, or that this overall space, or one of the deities that this overall space honored. One of the things that you see throughout Egyptian history that's clear here is you have deities meld together. So you have older deities like Re or Ra, who isn't ignored in the Middle Kingdom, but he's less emphasized, and he's sort of merged with the deity Matu here. Mentuhotep II particularly emphasizes Matu, a little bit of Amun, but by the time you get to the New Kingdom, Matu is really less emphasized, and Amun becomes kind of the prominent state deity. And you have the word for Lord here, so that's number 3. And then that beloved of part, which is number 1, is here. The word for Thebes, number 4, is here. And then that king of upper, or that king of lower and upper Egypt phrase, which is number 5, is this chunk here. Neb Hap-Atre, one of Mentuhotep II's names in the cartouche, number 6, is here. And then you have the may he live forever phrase. So the may he is implied. The hieroglyphs that are actually here is just the live and forever part. So number 7 here is the live because it's an ankh. And then number 8, forever, is here. This is a relief that's also in the Metropolitan that was originally, again, in his mortuary temple. So this is Mentuhotep II. So this, again, was one of the decoration that was originally within that temple that was removed from the site when it was excavated. And I think the Metropolitan Museum directed at least one of the excavations. So I think that's how some of the pieces of his temple ended up in the Met in particular. This is Deir el-Bahari, where his mortuary temple is from the air. But Deir el-Bahari is actually contains multiple buildings. So his mortuary temple is either this one or this one, because the more famous mortuary temple that is on the site is Hatshepsut's mortuary temple later on from the New Kingdom. And then somewhere in this region, you also have a monastery, or the foundations of a monastery that was on the site from late antiquity, and that's actually where we get the name Deir el-Bahari. That was not the ancient Egyptian name, but that name comes from the monastery that was once on the site, and we just now have the foundations of. This is a possible reconstruction of what Mentuhotep's mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari looked like when it was in its full glory. So this is that staff-shaped tomb part that I was talking about that is a local style of tomb for the elites that you see in the first intermediate. And so Mentuhotep, for his mortuary temple, seems to have asked for, or seems to have had the builders incorporate aspects of that local style into his mortuary temple. And then this is one possibility for what was kind of on the very top. But again, we have basically none of that left. So it's really like there's no way to ever know for sure whether this is right all the way, so to speak. This is other reliefs that again were once or parts of statues of him that were once within that mortuary temple structure, but are now in different museums. This is one of the original excavation photos from Deir el-Bahari. So this shows some of the reliefs in situ, and this I think is actually, I don't know for 100% sure, but I think this relief here is actually this relief that's now in the mat. So I think you're seeing that relief in situ here. But I don't know that for 100% sure. This is the passage to the actual tomb, so the actual burial spot of Mentuhotep II at Deir el-Bahari, because his mortuary temple is this structure here, a little into here, and then he's buried, the actual burial spots are further back within the rocks here. So again, like Giza, like Saqqara, when this would have been in use, you would have seen people coming and going from this general area. So Mentuhotep II dies, and then we seem to have the emergence of a new dynasty on the throne, kind of headed by King Amenemhat I, and I think his origins are a little bit mysterious. And so this is then some of the things, some of the major things that happen within Dynasty 12. So this is where we get the capital change. So in the Old Kingdom, the main capital was Memphis. Under Mentuhotep II, the capital location seems to have switched to kind of the general area of Thebes, because that's again where Mentuhotep II started as ruler. So that was sort of his start of kind of his local power base. And then in Dynasty 12, there's records of a new capital in the Fayum region called Ich-Taweh, somewhere in the north, and the exact location of that city is still unclear. But this is, I think they've done some work that give them hints of maybe where it was. Dynasty 12 does still build pyramids as their mortuary complexes and burial sites. But this time they build them, or they pay for them to be built at the site of Lahoun, which is in the Fayum region. And so this is where we get, like we did at Giza in the Old Kingdom, where we get a pyramid town, because of course you need somewhere to house the workers and the mortuary staff for your temple. You need somewhere for those people to live. And this, in the records, this pyramid town is called both Lahoun and Kahun. This is a kind of a map of the Fayum region generally, and the new capital city during this 12th dynasty pyramid. So this is sort of the general capital area. This is, sorry, it's a little bit blurry, so it takes me a little while to find stuff. This is the royal burial site of Lahoun, so the pyramid town where people actually live is kind of around here. And then this is, once you get up here, you're getting back into the upper Egyptian region of the Delta. So what's kind of up here that the map is cutting off is the region of Memphis, or I think the region of Memphis, and more modern day Cairo. These are some depictions of either things from 12th dynasty and some of their jewelry. So this is Senusret III. And one of the other things that you see, particularly for the 12th dynasty rulers, is for the first time they present themselves as somewhat aged rather than the ever youthful depictions and facial structure that you saw in the Old Kingdom. This is a seated statue of Senusret the first. And then this is a finger ring of Senusret III. So we know it's him because it has one of his names on it. So this is from the Old Kingdom, and this is an Old Kingdom ruler, King Sahura. And he is, or next to him is a divine figure. And so this is this sort of ever youthful look, ever majestic look that most of the Old Kingdom royal statuary is, particularly for the rulers. And then this is a Sphinx statue of Middle Kingdom rulers, of Senusret III. And you can see that they're at, like, there's age lines on the face, and there's no longer that ever young. And again, the exact reasons for this change in iconography is something that Egyptologists still are debating. And this is a map that I think we've seen before, but this is the general Fayum region area here. And then, like I said, one of the things that particularly the 12th dynasty rulers are known for, particularly Senusret 1 through either 3rd or 4th, is they actively either send soldiers out or themselves lead campaigns to actively conquer on a permanent basis this kind of general chunk of Nubia here. And so they start to put forts along the Nile River there. This is another map of kind of that Fayum region, but it shows you where the town of Kahun or Lahoun is, so that pyramid town. So the people who built and or staffed the mortuary cults of these Middle Kingdom rulers in the Fayum, this is kind of the general area where they seem to have lived. And then this is where I think some of the non-royal burials are as well. And then there too. This is a plan of that pyramid town of Lahoun or Kahun. So again, if you look at the archaeological archival records, it goes by both of these names. Petrie is one of the main people that first dug here. And one of the things that this site gives us is a lot of daily life objects and organic objects that we don't usually get in lots of other places. These are YouTube, or the YouTube video that talks a little bit more about some of the objects that were found in this town. And then this is some of the objects that were found at the site. They're now in the Petrie Museum, and this is from that Digital Egypt web site. This is a possible reconstruction of one of the 12th dynasty rulers, and Amenemhat I. This is a reconstruction of his mortuary complex in that general Leshit Fayum region. So, like I said, you still see pyramids being utilized as the kind of shape for the main burial place. And so the actual burial chamber would have been probably somewhere here. And then you have the mortuary temples and kind of the rest of the mortuary structure for the ruler's spirit above ground, kind of in this general chunk here. So these are just some links. So one of the things that pyramids had, I think starting in the Old Kingdom, but definitely by the Middle Kingdom, is something called pyramidon, which is basically, again, first you see these in just royal structures. Later on, it's part of kind of this democratization of the afterlife. You see them, I think, in non-royal structures as well. But it's basically a cover for the pyramid that gives its name and who it's for. So this is a YouTube channel that goes over the pyramidon that was found for the mortuary complex, or that's linked to the mortuary complex of Amenemhat III, and it translates it reads the translation word by word. This is also YouTube link that does like a reconstruction of the history of Memphis. And this is the general channel that has time lapses of other historical cities as well. And this is the pyramid, just the pyramid part of Amenemhat I. So what this is reconstructing as it is now. So as you can see, the pyramid itself has not survived time all that well, and nor have a lot of mortuary structures that were here and what was once uncovered by archaeology. I think a good chunk of it has now been recovered by the sand that's blown in. So this is just a little bit closer up of the pyramid to kind of give you a sense of some of the foundations that are left and like the exterior. This is from when they were first excavating the pyramid, or his pyramid. So again, it gives you a sense of what it looked like when it was first kind of being uncovered. So this is the pyramid, and then the foundations of the mortuary temple are in the background here. So this is from that same site, but I think this is a silo with maybe some burials here as well. So this also speaks to what I was talking about before, which is that one of the major things that you see happening throughout Pharaonic Egypt is site reuse. So a site is almost never used for just one thing. But it tends to be modified over and over. So this is another original excavation photo, but this has both the pyramid of Amenemhat I to the right, so here, and then a little bit further in the distance, the pyramid of Rosser the first here. This is a relief block from a building of Amenemhat I, so maybe his mortuary temple, but I don't know that for sure. But again, this gives you a sense of the types of decoration that were once on a lot of these buildings and is now in the Metropolitan. And this has some of the original color still left. So like here and then a little bit here. But this, again, when it was in situ or in the original building, would have been much more striking than kind of it appears now. So in terms of what's kind of going on with this relief, we have the god Horus, who is shown here, that is giving an Ankh, which represents kind of life in general, or eternity, sort of. And so that deity Horus is giving the Ankh to the ruler Amenemhat I. So his name would be here, but it's kind of cut off. And so it's Amenemhat I in the form of Horus the hawk. So this also gives you a sense of, again, the flexibility of the Egyptian religion. So pretty much no deity is only one thing. So that's why it's not quite correct to say like Osiris is the god of the dead, because he's associated with death and with getting you to that next stage of life, but that's not all he does. And that's something to kind of keep in mind when you're thinking about Egyptian religion and Egyptian, how to kind of read Egyptian reliefs as well. This is another relief block that again was originally probably part of a building, and now is in the Metropolitan, and it has two names of Middle Kingdom pharaohs. So it has the names of Amenemhat I and Senusret I in the royal cartouches, which are here. So here and here. This is 11th dynasty jewelry, so I think this is part of that famous exquisite jewelry that was found, I think, in some of the royal female burials at Lishet, or kind of in the general Fayum region, dating from the Middle Kingdom. So after Dynasty 12, we then get into Dynasty 13, and I talked about how Dynasty 13, whether you put it in the Middle Kingdom or that second intermediate period, it's a little bit more contentious among Egyptologists. So in terms of the written record, we seem to have about 50 kings over a period of around 150 years, but there seems to be a lot of rapid turnover. So unlike particularly in the 12th dynasty, you don't see a regular transmission from the father to the son. And so that's why the order of the 13th dynasty and who exactly reigned when and who exactly had control of what is something that's a little bit harder to figure out, because the documentary and the written record is just a lot more patchy for Dynasty 13 than it is for Dynasty 12. So this is a scarab of a queen that Egyptologists put in the Dynasty 13 family. And the scarab was sort of viewed by the Egyptians as a symbol of renewal, and so this is in the shape of that scarab or beetle, and it has her name. This is part of a statue that either comes from late Dynasty 12 or early Dynasty 13. But it's put within that Middle Kingdom period. Okay, so now I'm talking a little bit about the social history. So in terms of burial customs, when you get to the late Middle Kingdom, so roughly towards the end of the 12th dynasty, we have coffin texts that were sort of the next evolution of funerary text disappear. We also have wooden models, which you see in earlier Middle Kingdom burials. So wooden models are basically in miniature model form. The stuff that was once on tomb walls is now in the form of these wooden models. And at the end of, when you get to the late Middle Kingdom through the Second Intermediate period, those wooden models tend to disappear. So Egyptologists have divided the types of burials that we see into court type burials, so the highest officials, and then members of the court, and then I think the royal kings are included in there as well, and then other burials that have some new features but don't really have like a standard set of burial goods. And again, this is taken from the Digital Egypt for Universities site. So this is just a little bit more detail on the types of goods that we find in the court type burials. So I talked about before how Osiris in the Middle Kingdom assumes more importance as a deity that's linked with death and linked with rebirth. And so that's why you see in the Middle Kingdom, starting with the elite and then again trickling down, you see that after death there starts to be this belief that the deceased becomes one or sort of gets to hang out with Osiris. And then these are some objects that or some burial objects that we don't see before that archaeologists have found in these non-royal court type tombs for late Middle Kingdom through Second Intermediate period. And again, this is from the Digital Egypt for Universities site. So this is also from the Digital Egypt for University site, but this is an example of a burial that dates to the late Middle Kingdom. So it's late 12th to 13th dynasty. So it's at the site of Herger-Ra. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, so please excuse me. And Egyptologists have given it the name Tomb 112. So this is a shaft tomb, so not a super fancy like court type tomb. And it was found, the burial of a man was found in it. And so this is a 3D model of the shaft tomb. So this is a representation of the shaft tomb here. So the actual burial was probably somewhere here. And then this is objects that were found in this tomb that are now in the Petrie Museum of Art. And again, this is from the Digital Egypt for University site. This is another tomb that was found at that same cemetery, a roughly same date. And again, this is a 3D representation of the tomb. So it's a shaft type tomb, but it's a little bit more fancy because it has two chambers, one on the east and one on the west side. And then these are the finds that were discovered within the shaft tomb with the body. And one of the major important things about these two objects is they have funerary religious texts on them. So these are pottery vessels. So it's that democratization of the afterlife that I talked about before, that we're starting to see rituals that aim to help rebirth or give it a greater chance of happening, that once were associated just with royalty, just with the very elite class in the Old Kingdom, now are spreading further and so this is the Digital Egypt for University site, and this is a image of what is written on some of these pots. So this is 16128. So this pot here, and you can't really see it clearly, which is why I put this image up because it gives you a kind of better sense. So this is a drawing, and the original translators are given here of what the hieroglyphs actually say. And then this is the English translation of this object here. So being with Ta, Ta is a deity that's linked with wisdom. One shall give thee from thy gallons. Thou shalt drink water off the altar of Re, or Ra. Apparently, depending on the time period that you were in, the pronunciation was one of those two. Osiris shall give the assumption of a new form. Thou shalt behold the sheen of the water when thou hast forsaken thy house of darkness. Nile shall flow 7 cubits deep over the ground of thy thirst. Thou shalt drink a jug of thou shalt drink a jug milk, the present of Sakat Hor. Thou shalt put on the pure garment, having put off any other. When the hands of Teat have clothed thee, thou shalt look at the sun's disk. Thou shalt adore to Re or Ra. Thou shalt propate him who arises in none. Bread shall be given in thee. Bread shall be given thee in Memphis, pure because of thy offerings. So, a couple things to note about this passage. One, it says it's a very corporeal, body-based existence after death. So the assumption in these 3 or 4 lines is that you're gonna want to drink, you're gonna want to eat, you're gonna want to have nice clothes on. One of the other things to notice is that all these deities are present and are envisioned as interacting in some way with the person that is no longer on the earthly plane. So you have Re, you have Ta, you have Osiris, you have all of these deities that are blended in and kind of given different roles. You also have that mention of Memphis as still an important place, an important location that has ritual importance. And then I earlier was talking about how in the Middle Kingdom you see the site of Abydos, which starts out in the end of the pre-dynastic, early dynastic as basically the first main royal burial site. By the Middle Kingdom, it's still a burial site, but now more and more classes of Egyptians seem to be buried there, and it's become more of a pilgrimage site, and it also has developed these associations with Osiris as a deity as well. So this is from the Digital Egypt site. So this is a tomb 291, that was found at Abydos that dates roughly to the Middle Kingdom. And we have, because Petrie dug this tomb, we have, or the University College London has pretty good records for what Petrie found. So from his records, we know that it was that the burial was undisturbed, that it was probably a man, which is why I think there's that question mark there. And he was found, or the body was found in a wooden coffin. We also have, again, from records, particularly the tomb card, we have some of the description of the jewelry and some of the grave goods that were found with this body. So according to Petrie, around the neck, there was some kind of amulet, and then there was also apparently a mirror that was found with this body. So one of the other things that you see in the Middle Kingdom, which is hinted at by this body, is you see the use of amulets, both as burial objects, but also used as seals. And so this is one of the main ways that we get the names and titles of officials, because the amulets have their titles and their names. So it seems that amulets could be worn as amulets, so kind of around the neck or somewhere on the body as protective, but they're also used as seals. So to seal documents or doors or containers. And some of the amulets that we find in the funerary context have a funerary type epithet with the owner's name. So this is a hint that this amulet was probably not something that the owner used in life and then was repurposed and kind of put in the grave after she or he died, but was made particularly as a burial object to kind of help the owner on her or his next stage of kind of their life journey. So this is an example of a Middle Kingdom scarab or amulet of an official, because a lot of these amulets are in the form of scarab, so they're in the form of that beetle, which, like I was talking about for the Egyptians, symbolized renewal. So this is one that's in the Metropolitan. So again, so what we have is the title, which is or the not the official's name, but his title, which is A. So roughly translates to a manager of the commander. And then this register B is where we get the information that this official is a scribe, and we get his actual name. So the scribe Senab. So some of these things I've already talked about a little bit. So we have development of new areas, the Fayum, Thebes, but we also have reuse of the old, just in different ways and kind of different emphases. So Memphis is still lived in, it's still used. Abydos is still used as a burial site, and there's still people are still buried in the kind of the old kingdom heartland of lower Egypt, so in that Delta Memphis region. You also have that democratization of the afterlife, so that afterlife machinery and objects is kind of starting to trickle down to both the non-royal or to increasing members of the Egyptian society. So this is just a map of the Fayum region here. And then this is a map of the overall Nile, and the area in red is the Fayum. So this is this region. It's just blown up and demarcated to kind of give you a closer idea of the sub-regions. But this gives you a better sense of the overall size of the Fayum in relation to the kind of Nile Valley and the Nile River as a whole. So like I was talking about, one of the things that Middle Kingdom rulers do is they divert resources and order the Fayum area drained so that they have greater food producing sites and they have more areas and more water sources to divert for irrigation. And so you see greater urbanization and settlement in the Fayum region starting in the Middle Kingdom. This is a link that, again, I'm not going to play because it's somewhat long, but it's from that discovery mode game. So talks in particular about the Fayum region and kind of how it developed in the Middle Kingdom. So part of what comes along with greater settlement of a site is that people now are going to die and need somewhere to bury them. And so that's why one of the other things that we see in the Fayum is cemetery sites and burials in that region as well. So that's what this is. It is a map from Digital Egypt that is showing you some of the Middle Kingdom burials that have been found in the Fayum site or near the Fayum site of Qasr as-Saqa. So this is where basically the I think more where the desert is, and this is that cultivatable land, and this might be the Nile. So this is from the Metropolitan. This is part of a, so this was originally from a female grave that, female tomb that was in the Fayum region. And so this is a statue of the deceased woman that was buried. So we have her name and a particular funerary phrase that we see versions of back, I think, in the Old Kingdom. But this kind of tells us who she is. So you can see it kind of here, but then I just zoomed in on it here. So the translation of these hieroglyphs here, which you can see more clearly here. A royal offering of Osiris, Lord of Busaris, the great god, Lord of Abydos, giving an invocation offering of bread and beer, cattle and fowl to the Ka. Rough translation of Ka can be life force. Of Kemtet justified. So again, you see the emphasis on Osiris as these kind of one of the main deities that's linked with the afterlife and sort of linked with this next stage. You see the emphasis on the afterlife is going to be a full body existence. So in this case, Kemtet wants to or is anticipating that she'll be able to eat and drink. This is a map from one of the Penn Museum projects. and it just shows you where the general site of Abydos is, again, in that larger Nile River, Nile Valley setting. And then this is Thebes. So again, in the Middle Kingdom, Thebes starts to really achieve prominence that it didn't have in the Old Kingdom. That really revs up in the New Kingdom. This is maybe where that new Middle Kingdom capital of Ijtawe was. And then when you're getting down to here, you're getting Nubia. And so this is roughly where you have some of those Middle Kingdom pharaohs either send soldiers or lead expeditions themselves to permanently take over this land and build forts in these river border areas. So like I said, Abydos really becomes linked with the deity Osiris as the sort of main ruler of the afterlife, and really the kind of the sort of main deity that you want linkage with. And so part of Abydos also then becomes reconceptualized as one of his burial spots. And you also get, as a byproduct of this burial and of the pilgrimage that you also see, you get stele. And you also get a temple to Osiris that's built at the site that people come to in pilgrimage as well. So this is a map of Abydos from Digital Egypt, and it shows some of the different phases. So this is the main part of Abydos that you really see develop in Middle Kingdom. And this is the town that's basically founded by the state, because it's not on this map, but you do see Middle Kingdom royal mortuary complexes in kind of this general area. So like we saw with Laocoon/Kahun and the Pyramid Down of Giza, you're going to need somewhere for those people to live that staff those royal mortuary complexes. And so we have a town that's founded by the state in roughly the Middle Kingdom here to kind of serve that need. This is the kind of older organic town that sort of naturally grew up in that cultivatable zone, maybe as far back as the pre-dynastic. This is more the pre to early dynastic part of Abydos. This is one of the cemeteries for different classes of Egyptians. So this is one of the clusters that sort of again span the different time periods. So this is the town of Abydos over time. And I think it's talking about this organic town part here, not the town that was founded by the state in the Middle Kingdom to kind of house those mortuary complex personnel and kind of associated people. So I think it's talking about this chunk. So this is the yellow is the town parts that seem to date from 12th dynasty, so from the Middle Kingdom. And then the black, so here seems to be all the way back from the early dynastic first dynasty period. Green, so here you're starting to get into the Old Kingdom. Red is 18th dynasty, so now you're in the New Kingdom. And then sort of the last layer seems to be, or in blue, seems to be a temple from the late period. So here. So basically, my point is that all of these layers represent, again, more than 3,000 or more than 4,000 years of history of people living in this spot, in this cultivatable prime agricultural land, and sort of the waves of settlement and the history of the site use for just this small part by Dos. This is a map from, or a graphic that comes from the Penn Museum from some of their recent archaeological work that they've done at Abydos, and it really puts the Middle Kingdom layers at kind of center stage. So this is in the map from Digital Egypt. This chunk here is this, like, this is the roughly same spot. It's just this is marked out with the more recent archaeological finds. So that Wausau town, so that town that was founded by the state to service or to basically house the associated staff and people that were linked with the Middle Kingdom mortuary complex of Senusarwet III. This is one of the mortuary temples of the New Kingdom, or of a New Kingdom ruler. And then this is that Qom es Sultan, so the town that basically grew organically in Abydos from the pre-dynastic on. And then this is that chunk again in this part here that seems to be linked with the earliest royal burials, basically in the emergence of the state that we have. So its official name for the official name that subsite has been given is El Gab, or I think I've also seen El Quab. And it's in this region that once you get to the Middle Kingdom, one of the early dynastic royal tombs, I think it's the Tomb of Den, but I'm not 100% sure about that. But one of these early royal dynastic tombs in this cluster here, when you get to the Middle Kingdom, basically gets reconceptualized, re-envisioned as one of the burial places of Osiris. And so this area becomes then a general pilgrimage site for Egyptians of different classes. So again, you see that site reuse and changing ways of even just looking at a small part of Abydos. And then one of the other things that this map does, and the reason that I chose it, is again, it gives that hint of people still live in Abydos. This is still agricultural prime land, and so there's still modern villages, in kind of this general area here. And so that's something that archaeologists have to balance when they're excavating in Egypt, is the needs of the modern population versus the kind of remains that they're working with, because they're like a lot of the same land is being claimed. And then this is the different possible stages of that temple to Osiris that you first see emerge in the Middle Kingdom. So this is now in the Metropolitan Museum. So this is a statue head that was originally a full body statue that was in this Osiris temple at Abydos, that is, in terms of date, is anywhere from that Middle Kingdom to Second Intermediate period. so again, this object was once kind of somewhere in this general area in like full body form. And it's either or a dignitary. And so this is from its collection object page, and it just gives a little bit more information, again, of the original context of this object. And then I was talking about how part of the byproduct of Abydos becoming a site for pilgrimage, site for burial of different classes, you have stele or stela that emerge as an object class. And these basically have the requirements that were once in an elite mastaba. So an offering formula so that you get those offerings of food and drink in some form, a depiction of the deceased. And so it's basically like a kind of a miniature tomb in 3D with all the stuff that you need to kind of arise in the afterlife and kind of under or sustain the next phase of your existence. So these are just some examples of some of those stele from the Petrie Museum, because again, in the 19th century, it just stele just littered Abydos, and a lot of these were picked up by people and are now scattered, throughout the world in different museums. So for a lot of these stele, their original context has been lost, which is very unfortunate, because it, again, like we could, if they were still in place, we could know so much more. But there's only so much information that these objects can give us, particularly for the ones that really have no provenance now that they're in museums, which is unfortunate. So this is a kind of a fancier version. These stele, we're probably not the most wealthy people. Like if you look, the carving is somewhat rough. They're not super large, but they're still, like someone had a good amount of discretionary income, they could afford to have these made. So this example is like a fancier version. So this originally, again, is now in the Metropolitan, but this was found at the site of Abydos, and it comes from that Middle Kingdom pilgrimage burial period. And so we have the person who made it, or the person who paid for it to be made. So that's Ru Horjer Sen. So you see him, because he actually, I think, so he here or here, because there's also instances of people making stele for deceased relatives or deceased family members. And so you have the deceased person that is in front of the offering table, and then you have a depiction of the person who actually paid for these stele to be made that may still be living. And so it may be the case for this. And actually, we click on the link. So in this case, the person the main person that the stele is honoring is deceased. So it is this person that's in front of the table of offerings, because it was found in his cenotaph at Abydos, which is kind of a pilgrimage niche. And there is also some family members that are listed here, and the idea is that by their name on this stele, they're also ideally included in the offerings that are given as well. So most of the family members' names, I think, are here. This chunk is the offering formula that we saw a little bit with that female statue from the Fayum. So again, this is the translation of this chunk here, so that top registers. A royal offering of Osiris, Lord of Busaris, the elder god, Lord of Abydos, and then you have a version of the offering formula. You have some of the titles of this person that he had in life, and then you have some of the particular food and drinks and their amount annotated in terms of what he hopes to have being given to him as offerings in eternity as well. This is from another Abydos burial, and it's an amulet that was found in one of those Abydos burials. And then I talked about before that the Middle Kingdom is also viewed as the golden age of literature, so not just funerary texts, but narrative works and stories. And we see versions of these both on papyrus and on ostrakhan or ostraka. And there is a focus on like elite Egyptians, but also non-elite and Egyptians lower down the social scale as well. What Egyptologists call teachings and some of the fiction stories stayed popular all the way down to the New Kingdom. So that's how we have some of these, as they were recopied. And so we have versions or chunks on either papyrus or ostrakhan that were founded in New Kingdom private context. And this is from Digital Egypt for Universities. One of their pages on that site that talks more in detail about this process. This is a lecture from YouTube about kind of this general topic. So this is on the left here is an ostrakhan with part of one of these literary texts. And then on the right is a papyrus with a version of that same literary text. This is a scribal exercise tablet with one of these literary texts. This is an ostrakhan with a particularly famous one of these narratives that's been given the name Satire of the Trades, because it basically tries to make the argument that being a scribe is the best thing ever. And so a lot of the verses are basically about all the bad things that non-scribes have to do in their jobs. This is an ostrakhan with kind of the beginning part of another, what's become a rather well-known text, because again, it seems to have stayed in kind of vogue and popularity. That's called the Wisdom of Amen M. Ope. This is a ostrakhan with a fragment from another literary text that seems to have been first written down in the Middle Kingdom, but again, stayed in vogue and popularity all the way through the New Kingdom and beyond, called the Prophecies of Nefertiti. And then one of the really famous narrative tales that seems to be first written down in the Middle Kingdom has been given the name the Tale of Sinhui. And so this is just a little bit more about kind of that narrative and some of its main themes. Okay. So now we're gonna backtrack, or now we're gonna go forward a little bit. So we reach Dynasty 13, so we reach kind of the end of the Middle Kingdom. We have the state break up into different factions. And so now we're in that second period of regionalization that Egyptologists have given the name the intermediate periods to, and since it's the second one, it's called the second intermediate period. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but I'm going to also focus on that period and its context with the greater Near East. Because when you get into the New Kingdom, what's happening in ancient Mesopotamia, so roughly speaking, where modern Iran or modern day Iraq is, modern day Turkey, Syria, there's things there that happened during Egypt's second intermediate period that then have a bearing and affect things that happen in Egypt's New Kingdom. So that's why we're going to go a little bit further afield now. Okay. So and I actually made a separate PowerPoint for that element. So I'm going to end this video and I will see you guys next time.